have heard it your entire life. Before the alarm, before the coffee, before the first light has even decided what color it wants to be. That sound cuts through everything. Sharp, loud, impossibly certain for a creature that has never once checked a clock. Most people have a simple explanation ready. The rooster sees the sunrise. The light triggers the crow. Simple biology. Case closed. But that explanation has a problem. Because roosters do not wait for the sunrise. They crow before it. Sometimes long before it. In complete darkness, in the middle of a moonless night, in a windowless barn with no light source whatsoever, the rooster crows. On time. Every single morning. Without fail. And when scientists finally decided to take that seriously, what they found inside that small feathered skull changed the way researchers think about biological time, consciousness, and the ancient relationship between this bird and the human world it has lived beside for 10,000 years. Stay with me from beginning to end, because what we cover in the final section is something that most people who keep roosters already feel in their bones, but have never had the science to explain. Here's the first thing you need to understand about the rooster's crow. It is not a response to light. It is a prediction of light. That is not a small distinction. That is everything. In 2013, researchers at Nagoya University in Japan conducted a study that settled something scientists had quietly debated for decades. They placed roosters in controlled environments with no natural light cues whatsoever. Constant dim light. No sunrise, no change in brightness. No signal from the outside world that morning was approaching. The roosters crowed anyway, at the same time every morning, without variation, without prompting, without any external cue to tell them the night was ending. What this proved was something remarkable. The rooster is not reacting to the dawn. He is anticipating it, running on an internal clock so precise, so deeply embedded in his biology, that it operates independently of everything happening outside his body. Scientists call this a circadian rhythm. From the Latin, circa dies, about a day. Nearly every living thing on Earth has one. Humans have one. Plants have one. Even single-celled organisms have one. But the rooster's circadian clock has a property that makes it extraordinary. It is loud. Most creatures with circadian rhythms express them quietly. A hormone shift here, a temperature change there. Internal adjustments that the animal itself may not even be aware of. The rooster announces his. Every morning, as his internal clock reaches its pre-dawn peak, a cascade of hormonal signals fires through his body. His core temperature rises. His heart rate increases. And then, from somewhere deep in that biological architecture, comes the command. Crow. Not because the sun is rising, because his body has calculated with extraordinary precision that the sun is about to rise. And he has been announcing that calculation to the world for 10,000 years. The crow is not random noise. Everything about it is engineered. The sound a rooster produces, that long, cascading call that carries across fields and neighborhoods and quiet morning streets, is one of the most acoustically complex vocalizations produced by any domestic animal. Researchers who have analyzed it with audio spectrum equipment find layers that the human ear hears as a single sound, but are in fact multiple overlapping frequencies designed to travel far, designed to cut through wind, through walls, through the thick silence of early morning when sound behaves differently than it does in the middle of the day. And there is a hierarchy to it. In any group of roosters, the dominant male crows first. Always. The research on this is unambiguous. The alpha rooster's crow functions as a kind of permission structure. Once he has crowed, subordinate males may crow after him, in order of rank. Lower-ranking roosters will actively suppress their own urge to crow if the dominant male has not yet started. Researchers at Kyoto University demonstrated this by isolating individual roosters in soundproof boxes and then playing recordings of the dominant male's crow. Subordinate roosters responded by crowing immediately after, even with no other bird present, even with no visual cue, just the sound of the dominant male's voice triggering the cascade. The crow is not just a clock signal, it is a social statement. It is the dominant male announcing to every living thing within range to his flock, to rival roosters in neighboring territories, to the predators that hunt in darkness, to the humans who have slept through the night under his watch, that he is here, that he is present, that the night has been held and the morning belongs to him. There is something ancient in that, something that preceded every alarm clock ever made by 10,000 years. Here is something that changes the picture entirely. The rooster crows first. That is established. But he does not crow only once. A rooster in a normal environment will crow multiple times throughout the day. Morning is the peak. The first crow, the loudest, the most urgent. But he continues through the day, responding to things most people walk right past without noticing. A car door, a sudden change in light, a shadow passing overhead, a stranger entering the yard, the return of someone familiar, another rooster's crow from 3 properties away. The rooster is monitoring his environment constantly. His hearing is calibrated to frequencies that matter. The high, thin cry of a hawk, the rustle of a predator in the grass, the sound of a flock member in distress. And when something in his environment changes, when the data coming in shifts in a way that registers as significant, he responds with his voice. This is why a rooster that lives beside a road will crow every time a truck goes past. Why a rooster in a quiet yard will suddenly sound off at 11 in the morning for no reason you can see. There is always a reason. You simply do not have the sensory equipment to know what it was. His eyes compound this. A rooster's visual system processes movement at a speed that makes human vision look sluggish. He can detect a hawk circling at a height where you would see only empty sky. He can register the flicker of movement in tall grass that your eye would smooth over completely. He is not just a clock. He is a sentinel. That word, sentinel, is not poetic license. It is the functional role the rooster has filled in human settlements for 10,000 years. Before there were walls and locks and alarm systems, there was the rooster in the yard, awake before everyone else, listening, watching, announcing. Every morning he tells you the night passed safely. You have been receiving that message your entire life without knowing it was being sent. The red jungle fowl of Southeast Asia. That is where he came from. Somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, in the forests of what is now Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China, human beings began a relationship with a wild bird that would eventually spread that bird to every inhabited continent on Earth. The domestic rooster is descended almost entirely from the red jungle fowl, a bird that still exists in the wild today, still crows at dawn in the forests of Southeast Asia with the same call that wakes up farms and neighborhoods across the entire planet. The domestication of the chicken is one of the oldest and most consequential relationships between humans and animals in all of history. And it began not, as most people assume, with the egg. It began with the crow. Early archaeological and historical evidence suggests that chickens were kept initially not as food animals, but as timekeepers and as combatants. For the sport of cockfighting, which has ancient roots across cultures, and as living alarm systems whose dawn crow marked time in settlements that had no other reliable clock. The rooster's crow appears in the ancient literature of nearly every culture that kept chickens. In ancient Rome, the rooster was sacred to Mars, the god of war, and his crow was seen as a battle signal, the announcement that a new day of struggle was beginning. In ancient Greece, the rooster was associated with Asclepius, the god of medicine, and was offered as thanks for healing, because the dawn he announced was the return of life after the darkness of illness or night. In the Gospel of Mark, the rooster's crow is the pivot point of one of the most psychologically precise moments in the New Testament. Peter denies knowing Jesus 3 times, and then the rooster crows. And Peter, hearing it, breaks down weeping. Because the rooster had told him exactly what would happen, and he had not believed it possible until the sound made it real. The rooster's crow as a moment of reckoning, of truth arriving whether you are ready for it or not. That image has survived 2,000 years because it captures something true about the sound. It does not ask your permission. It does not wait for you to be ready. It arrives at the edge of darkness every single morning, and it tells you, without apology, that the night is over. There is one more thing. Something that farmers have known for centuries and that scientists are only recently beginning to study with the tools to take it seriously. Roosters change their behavior before weather events, before storms, before significant drops in barometric pressure. Hours before any instrument in your house would register a change, the rooster in the yard is already responding to it. He crows differently, more urgently, more frequently. He moves his flock. He calls them in from the edges of the yard toward shelter. He positions himself between the flock and the direction from which the threat is coming, even when the sky still looks clear. What he is detecting is not magic. It is physics. Birds have a sensory capacity for barometric pressure that humans entirely lack. The drop in atmospheric pressure that precedes a storm is information the rooster's body registers as clearly as you register the sound of a fire alarm. He does not interpret it, he reacts to it. Immediately, accurately, consistently. This is why the old farming traditions in nearly every culture that kept chickens include some version of the same observation. If the rooster is restless and crowing in the afternoon, weather is coming. If he takes the flock inside early, do not plan on a clear tomorrow. Those observations were not superstition, they were data, collected over thousands of years of people paying close attention to an animal that was paying close attention to the world. He was telling them things, every morning, every stormy afternoon. Every time the pressure dropped and the flock went quiet, and he positioned himself at the edge of the yard and crowed into the coming dark. They just had to learn to listen. Here is the thing that people who have kept roosters will understand immediately. The morning he doesn't crow is the morning you notice. Not the 10,000 mornings before it. Not the sound that woke you before your alarm, that pulled you out of sleep before the light came, that you folded into the background of your life so completely you stopped hearing it as a sound and started hearing it as silence, as the absence of something wrong. The morning the rooster doesn't crow, you wake up and something is different before you know what it is. Something in the quality of the quiet tells you, and you go to the window or you go outside and you find out. That absence, the missing crow, tells you more in 2 seconds than 1,000 mornings of the sound ever did. Because the sound meant everything was right with the world, and its absence means something has changed. There is a grief in that which people who have never kept animals may not fully understand. But the people in this community understand it. The relationship between a person and the animal that wakes them every morning is one of the oldest forms of trust that exists. He was doing his job every single day, whether you were listening or not. He was up before you. He was watching. He was announcing the morning into existence with everything he had. And every single morning that you woke up and heard him, even if you pulled the pillow over your head and wished he would stop, he had already done something for you that you did not have words for. He had told you the night was over. He had told you you were safe. He had told you the world was still there, still turning, still arriving at another morning the same way it had arrived at every morning before it, with that sound, with that certainty, with that voice that does not wait and does not doubt and does not need the sun to have risen before it announces that it will. I want to ask you something before you go. If you have ever had a rooster, or if you grew up somewhere where you heard one every morning, I want to know what that sound means to you now. Not what it meant then. What it means now when you hear it or when you remember it. Tell me in the comments, because some sounds become part of us in ways we do not notice until they are gone. And this community understands that in a way that I think is worth saying out loud. If this video reached something in you, share it with someone who grew up with that sound. You probably already know exactly who that person is. I will see you in the next one.